trust. You can go to GitHub and you can vet a project and you can practice your code and get it reviewed by people more senior to you. And in the design world, we don't really have that. And so as an early adopter of design tokens, from the design perspective, I just thought, let me just start sharing what I've learned along the way everywhere that people could consume it. Because I was one of the first people to build one of these CI/CD pipelines from design to code. I've primarily worked as a design team of one at scrappy startups or working with agencies. And as a result of trying to give back to the community about what I've learned and creating all of this educational content, I found myself doing a lot of workshops and teaching and consulting. I worked with Token Studio for 3 years. So I'm really excited to be here and answer any questions the best way I can. Because of my experience consulting and working in open source, I've got to peek under the hood of a lot of big systems, even though I've primarily worked on small teams. So in the gamut of like experience, I might not be speaking of stuff I've done hands-on, but also I've been a helping hand in a lot of these like bigger teams. So I'm confident. I did get to peek at some of your questions. I'm pretty confident that I could give you at least something to help you think about how you might approach a problem to solve it your way, because of course there's no one right way to do anything, especially in design tokens. So it's more about trying to figure out what's going to work right for you and your team and your project in this moment with the resources that you have. And I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. That's really interesting. Okay, before we jump to the questions, I just need to take 1 minute to show you actually the graduation projects for the team. The team building a multi-theme design system that can be scalable. So for example, here we have 3 different brands, and each brand have light mode and dark mode. So you can navigate here between this, that. And also we have more than 1 language, for example, Arabic and English. And for Arabic, actually change the direction totally from left to right, to right to left. Plus also each language has 2 different typography styles, serif and sans serif. You can see the font is a change based on the language here. Also we have 2 density themes, compact and comfortable, 3 themes for radius, okay, plus also 4 themes for shadows. And the system should be scalable, so we can add 1 more brand or different color theme, like high contrast, different language, different typography style, and so on. So they know how to build and structure and plan for scalable design systems. Okay, some tasks they do individually, but for final project we group them to 6 teams. Okay, so if we back to the main questions, so do you need me to pick questions, or you just can pick whatever you want?
Yeah, you should pick questions. So right now you are sharing your whole screen in both windows. I don't know if that's what you want to do for the recording with this sort of split screen between the chat. That's up to you. And I did notice that someone has their hand up. I'm not sure if they still have a question or not.
That's all good. I just asking for a recorded meeting.
Yeah, I'm already
Okay.
recording. I'm already recording from my side here. Don't worry.
Perfect. Yeah. So, Osama, if you want to ask me the questions and have them up on the screen so everyone has a visual, I'll answer them kind of interview style. And if there's anything that like would be better suited with some sort of visual, I will try to find time to go and find those things. So let's do it.
Yeah, let's pick this question as a first question. So, when do design tokens add a real value to the product, and when do they become unnecessary complexity?
This is such a good question. Well, first of all, I think the fact that you guys have all made it through this course and created something already means that for you as an individual working in design systems, they're always going to add value because you've already gotten over the learning curve. So you have to remember that when you're learning something new, everything else feels more complicated, even when you should be in that sort of autopilot flow mode, right? Think about every time Figma or PenPot or a design tool or wherever you're working, they just change something on you. And that one little change kind of has this ripple effect of everything else you do for a little while after until you get used to it. So If the learning curve is really steep and the expense of being in a learning curve lowers your capacity to deliver everything else you have to do in your day-to-day, then they're not providing enough value for you to tackle the learning curve. But once you get over the learning curve, they're like a secret weapon you have in your back pocket. So you can always pull them out and you can use them. And one thing that I always want to encourage people to remember is you don't need permission from someone else on your team to have a workflow that works for you. So if you want to start working with design tokens on your own, let's say you start a new job and developers don't know about it and the designers have a lower skill level and they're not ready to adopt it, you can continue to use them in your workflow because that's how you like to work, right? If I like to use Obsidian to write my notes, I really don't care who says that I have to write it in Google Doc. I'm going to write it in my note-keeping tool of my choice, and then I'll move it to them to share. So it becomes a valuable part of your toolkit when you can use it effectively and use it to work faster, stronger, better, and become a better team member. But if it's slowing you down and it's causing everything else to feel more chaotic, then it's not a good time to use it.
Awesome. Okay, I think this was very clear. Okay, let's jump to the next one. If you are introducing design tokens into an existing large design system, for example, like a government design system or something like that, where would you start and why? Yeah, this is actually a big problem in Middle East because design system concept is still new. Only few countries start to focus on having a design system as a service for software companies. A few countries also start to present or start to build the government design system. So usually this question repeated a lot. So how can I talk, or from where I talk to the team or to the company to have a design system, especially for the large companies?
Yeah, so this is going to seem like a non-direct answer, but the first thing I would do is find allies. So who else on your team can you get excited about this? So it's not just one person trying to plant these seeds across a big organization. So if you think about what are the benefits of design tokens, right? They are, introduce some complexity and some sophistication, yes, but the benefit of that is that we have more consistency, and ideally there's less back and forth between design and development. We start to bridge a gap between the two of us. So it makes sense that an ally, if you're on the design side, could be somebody on the engineering side. And you figure out what pain points, what problems do we have, and how can design tokens solve those problems, and you just start talking about them as a possibility. Ask questions to developers. Hey, if we're constantly spending so much time figuring out what's the right border radius to apply to this thing over and over and over again, I see coming up, we have so many questions. I've calculated 10 Slack messages and 4 emails about this topic. What if we could just put one reusable variable, and you can call it a variable because developers know that term, CSS variable or whatever. If we put one little token, one little variable in our system somewhere that we can get rid of these 10 Slack messages and 5 emails that come up every 3 weeks, how much time does that save you? Okay, should we try it? Should we try just one? And figure out where the fire is burning and introduce that one thing. If you don't know where the fire is burning and someone's asking you point blank, where would you start? I always say the things that are opinionated. So if you think about your token architecture or your token structure or the way that information flows through your system, it always starts at the top with your primitives. Those don't change depending on which brand, they're always there, right? But then you think about brand identity or product identity. What does that mean for their identity? Okay, it's usually typeface, shape, color. And then you look at, and sometimes density. And then you look at what are the components that are the most opinionated, and it's always the things that have those things around them. So buttons are typically very opinionated. The colors change, the shape may change, the typography may change. Then I look at something like a badge or a tag, because those usually have so many different options in them. It's a wide variety of color and shape and density. And then always menus, so navigation and menus. And I always look at those 3 things, and I'm like, okay, what's causing us the most time and the pain to build? Where are we spending the most time and energy bickering back and forth? Where do we have the most inconsistency between design to dev? And I start there. So that's how I would do it programmatically, but always start with people. Get one other person on your team to bounce ideas off of and come up with the solution together, and just start with one. And you could even say, let's try one for 6 weeks or 12 weeks. And then from there we reassess. Maybe we take it out, and you make it low stakes. But start small and then keep building, because you could just keep reinforcing the value that it's bringing to the team and always hit them in the wallet where it hurts. guess what? We saved 15 emails this month that we didn't have because we introduced this one token.
Exactly.
And that, if you can figure out like what is the dollar amount of the people that are on those email threads, becomes a very big number very quickly.
Yeah, this is a good strategy because we thought at the beginning if we need to discuss with the large companies we need to build a fully scalable design system or implement the design tokens. We go from the return of investment scope, and after that we discover it doesn't work. So to figure out the problems and to test it and discuss with the team and to have some numbers that make managers actually understand where is the problem and how can we use our resources, our team resources more better. Maybe this can help. And the good one you said is we pick small one and we test it for like a few weeks and we see the result and we compare. After that we can convince them to go more. Yeah, good one.
Exactly. Start small, hit them in the wallet. That's where it hurts the most, saving time or saving money. And then you can create how much it would save over time if we had a few more and just keep building that way.
Yeah, nice. Thanks, Sam. So the next question actually coming from the fight between should we do 2 levels of tokens or should we do 3 levels of tokens? Okay, so okay, the team here knows actually the benefits and or the pros and cons for each strategy to use 2 or 3. But we still also need to know how do you decide between using 2 levels and 3 levels.
So just so I make sure I'm talking about the same thing, I will assume it. We talk about 3 levels. We're talking about primitives and options at the top, all the decisions that you make at the middle, and then component specific at the bottom if I was going to make it super simple, right? You're going to have a million different words for each of those different 3. So that would be 3.2 would be primitives and like primitive options, and then your decisions in the middle, semantic, whatever you want to call them. Yeah, okay. Think about who each of these levels are for. So component specific tokens at the bottom, this is the debatable one. Who are they for, right? They're for LLMs. So if your AI assisted workflow is really important, component specific tokens are your bestie, because there is no debating about where this thing is supposed to be used, because the name of it creates a self-documenting address for your design decision. So number 1, is LLM assisted workflow important? Then it's a consideration. 2 is for developers. Developers also don't care. They don't care how they get to the answers because everything is combined, renamed, shortened, resolved. They just get the final result. In fact, I was just looking at one of my big clients. Big client, I mean, they have 50 products, 600 designers, 3,000 developers, and 5 design systems feeding off of their primitives. Big client. And I'm talking to the head of the iOS development teams, and I'm like, how did tokens work? And he goes, oh, by the time we get them, it's just the final, like, resolved values in them. I don't even understand the flow of the information, how it got there. They're literally only receiving the component-specific tokens. So if your developers are interested and want to introduce CI/CD pipeline, right? So things are always changing at the top and we just want to have that flow through, then component-specific tokens are great because you never have to take them off the system and replace them with something else. Whereas if you don't have those there, sometimes you do have to take them off and put them back on and use a different token. And that would be a breaking change, which causes more work for your developers. So if your developers are like, I don't want to do this anymore, CI/CD pipeline is the way, make it so I never have to touch these tokens ever again, then yeah, component-specific tokens are great. However, it's a lot more tokens for you to manage.
Exactly.
It's a lot more things. Everything you introduce to your system, you have to manage it, you have to maintain it, you have to document it. At some point, you're going to have to sunset it or archive it or change it. And so you also have to think about that. Like, do I actually have the time to do this properly? And when I talked about those very opinionated components, and like trying something on is a phrase I like to use a lot. So if you want to try on component-specific tokens, start with the ones that are the most opinionated, because within your brands or your products, wherever it is in your multi-dimensional theming architecture, brand A might like round, brand B might like square. So in that case, then you have a button shape token, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. And that can be coming from brand A and brand B, and then those are always different. So start small, build up to it. You do not have to have 100% component-specific tokens. And even if you are saying we will always have 3 levels, you can also have the same tokens applied to multiple different pieces within your system. So if all of your actions are going to consistently have the same shape or roundness and radius, you could have literally one token that you apply to everything. It's component specific, but to a category of components, and that's also perfectly acceptable. And that kind of hits you in that middle ground.
Yeah, I still remember the video I watched it for you, I think 1 year ago, talking about the best naming. It's not semantic. Yeah. And you're trying to introduce, if we didn't need to touch these variables anymore again, so we can go for component specific tokens, but absolutely this is additional work from the team. So the conclusion here is when I can use 2 levels or 3 levels, this is can be depends on the project. We have to discuss as a team and see the benefits and the issues for that, or the weaknesses for each one, and we can take a decision at the end. It's not bad. We still have manual updates or manually changes, but not everything manual like before. But it depends. Very good. Thanks so much. Okay. How do you go about onboarding fresh team member to your existing structure so they can contribute and consistent? I think this question may be related also to the documentation, how we can document our decisions or our system architecture, how it works.
It's always striking to me that the number of people working in design systems don't study systems thinking from an academic perspective. A lot of people think that systems thinking is just something that you just call thinking about design systems, but that's not it. Systems thinking is an academic framework. And you can apply systems thinking to anything, to like setting up a coffee shop, to transportation systems, to all sorts of stuff. And one of the key parts in systems thinking framework is using a systems map. And a systems map helps us visualize the relationships between parts of the system, So if you think about token architecture or token structure or the way that your information flows through your system as a system itself, the fastest and easiest way to communicate that is by visualizing it in a map. And that can be so lo-fi. You literally could go to a whiteboard and go, okay, what's at the top? Primitives. Just put something there that represents it. And the more physical the thing is, the better. Because through these blocks of like, okay, I have primitives, then I have my brands, then I have my light and my dark mode, and then I have components down here, and this is the color system, right? And it's just 4 blocks on the board, zoomed out, totally just kind of abstract, like, oh, okay, I get it. And if you think about it, if you ever sit in engineering meetings and they're talking about architecture of their systems, because what we're doing here is systems architecture, they always have architecture diagrams. They always have them. They're never really zoomed in and specific, but they're enough to understand how does the system work? What are the pieces within it? How does the information flow? The other cool thing about systems mapping is it allows you to see the holes in your information. Like, oh, I actually don't know. So in the tool that you guys built already, right? If I was to say to you, okay, new requirement comes in from the client, we need to have high contrast color as an option with light and dark for each brand. How do you modify the system to support this new requirement? How do you think that through? It's much easier if you already have some sort of even lo-fi system map. Sticky notes in FigJam is the fastest and lowest fi way I can do it. You guys are already in FigJam. You literally can bring out stacks of sticky notes and be like, okay, this is how the information flows at a high level. Now I want to bring in high contrast color. Okay, well, where would that sit? So I have the minimum amount of impact. It makes the most sense. And then from there, you can go in and you can start to zoom in, look at tokens, look at variables in Figma, look at all these things that you need to do to make it happen. But systems mapping is actually the best way to onboard someone into the system because all they have to know is high level, how does the information flow? And that's it.
Awesome. Okay, let's jump into this one. This is also a fight here in Middle East. I'm not sure in Europe or in the US you have same or not. When some developers
I'm actually in Canada, guys. I'm in Toronto, so I'm Canadian. I'm one of the good ones on this side of the world. My neighbors to the south, we don't talk about them. So yay, Canada.
Yeah, sorry about that. So when developers push back against the tokens due to complexity or timeline or something like that, how do you handle this conflict?
Okay, so when people are pushing back, you gotta dig in to understand why. And doesn't come from being defensive. That comes from helping people feel heard, right? So like, I'm actually never on a project to change somebody's mind. I'm there to give them advice, show them an alternate way of thinking about things, a different approach, dig in a little bit, but making people feel heard and understanding why are they pushing back, okay? Key reasons that this happens, they don't trust a word you're saying. Why don't they trust you? Likely not because of you're not trustworthy, but likely because some other designer in the past did some stupid shit that made them think that designers don't know what they're talking about. And half the time this happens because Figma has some tricks up their sleeve that make us allowed to do pure magic that cannot even be built in code, okay? I can literally go into Figma right now and turn on /zeros on typography, and I've done this, which is why I'm able to say this. Okay, then you go and hand over this beautiful file to this developer. Nope, signed off, you gotta build it. And they go, that new font face that you brought in does not support a /glyph. Like, well, just make it /fit. I just turned it on in Figma. They're like, no, actually, you have to choose a typeface that has a /0. I can't just make it slashed. Like, what you're doing is magic in Figma. I can't do that in code. And so these things in their past cause this inherent distrust. And how do you gain somebody's trust in general, right? Make them feel heard, understand how they're working, take a user experience research approach to it. Ask them to teach you something. Can you walk me through how you work day to day? Let me understand what's going on. Why is this so hard? Like, why don't you want to do it? So they either don't trust you, they don't have the time, or they don't understand the technology. And in my experience, those are the 3 root causes to there being some sort of like, no, I don't want to. And so then it becomes understanding what's the root cause of the problem, and then how do I help them understand the value? Okay, is it that you don't have time to learn this? You can't change that. But maybe you can talk about all the time that they're burning on stupid, QA back and forth for you to say, if we would just try one token, this piece would go away. Can we just try one and start small and buy in? So understand where they're coming from, try to understand and try to be helpful and try to learn from them and understand what the root cause is. And that's really like the basis of all conflict resolution. And know that it's usually not you. It's usually somebody in the past that made them think, why is a designer coming in here and trying to tell me how to do my job when they don't know what they're talking about? And that's like an archetype, right? And that happens a lot.
Awesome. And this also lead us to maybe if the timeline is a problem. So maybe, okay, we all agree that design tokens is something really good, will help the company, but this is not the best time for us to start to implement it. So maybe we just take a decision later in the future once the company goals and everything can be ready for this scaling. Okay. I think
Absolutely. And as a designer, like I mentioned before, like you can keep using them. You can keep building the system and just say, hey, when you're ready, they'll be here. I'm going to keep using them because it makes me work faster and stronger and better and easier on my side. If you don't want to adopt it, that's okay. But they'll be here when you're ready. And maybe they will, or maybe they won't.
We have here 3 questions maybe related to each other. You can answer them together. Okay. So what is the first red flag that tells you the system is wrong? And the second one is, can you share a design system decision you made that didn't work out and why? And the last one, from your experience, what is the biggest mistake teams make when starting a design system?
Oh, so many good ones in here. Okay. Biggest mistake you can make when starting a design system is doing it in silos. So if you, as one designer, are trying to build a design system and you're not talking to your product designers or other people who might be using the system, if you're not watching a developer see how they work, if you're not talking to cross-functional stakeholders and marketing teams and the boss and the boss's boss, and you're not listening in to understand what all their problems are, what are their OKRs, what are they trying to accomplish in the future, if you're not getting input from everybody who's going to be touching the design system and you're trying to do it by yourself, you're never going to succeed. Because you're going to build basically a component library in Figma for you that no one else is going to want to use or touch. And so design systems are a team sport. They're meant to be collaborative, right? Like as a designer, my job is to make the developer's life easier. Designers don't ever want to admit this, but that's the truth. They're the ones building the tools that are being out there and put in the public. So my job is to make their life easier. I don't understand what their pain points are, how they're working. I don't know how to make their life easier. If I have a stakeholder who can't find the right color for a slide presentation because they got an investor meeting last minute, that's a problem. So then, like, how can I help solve these problems, right? I'm constantly listening and trying to figure out how can I build a solution for my team and have them be included in it. So that is the biggest mistake, is doing it by yourself and doing it in a silo. It's not to say you need permission to start. I always just start. I just start doing stuff, but I'm always like trying to like figure out like, hey, if you had this, how could I make it better? And I always end every meeting with like, how can I make your life easier? Is there anything I can do to help you? Even if I'm asking them for something, that kind of like puts me in as a winner on new teams. Well, the first red flag that tells you the system is wrong, the whole design system is wrong. The first red flag. When I see a bunch of stuff in Figma that's like not named properly, like frame number 5821, and everything is scattered everywhere, and they have everything kind of just vomited on a page, and I look at it and I instantly feel like there's chaos. So if I look at something and my first reaction is it feels chaotic, I know they're in trouble. And that usually comes from teams that are working really quickly, don't have time to like polish and clean up, or they have a lot of bad habits that they haven't yet sort of rewound and unworked yet. And this happens a lot, especially in startups and small teams, right? I'm working quickly, I'm a design team of one, no one else is looking at my file, and then they bring in someone else and I'm like, oh Lord, we're in trouble here. Because it spends a lot of time to undo the chaos. And then you have to decide, okay, are we gonna clean it up or are we gonna build something new? And I always think about it like, I'm the Marie Kondo of Figma. This is the Does It Spark Joy professional cleaning lady, if you're unfamiliar. So she goes into people's houses that are really chaotic and she teaches them how to organize. And usually that means you have to pull everything out of the closet and you've got to look at it, and then you have to organize it, and then you have to throw away some stuff or donate some stuff, and then you can rearrange it, you can put it back together, and you can figure out, does it need to be rebuilt or rebought or whatever. And so if it feels chaotic to me, that's how I know that they're in trouble. And a design system decision you made that didn't work out, and why? Oh my goodness, so many. If there's a mistake that you have read an article on the internet about, like, how to do it differently and here's why, I probably did it. The biggest one I would say today that I'm still mildly embarrassed about is I had all of my icons as one component, because I thought that would like make it easier, right? You just pull in one component, but it had like 10,000 variants in it or something.
Oh.
And like scrolling through this thing was a nightmare. Performance was a nightmare. The naming was a nightmare. Everything was a nightmare. And trying to separate it out after was next to impossible. And at some point I was like, okay, fine, fuck it. We just gotta like redo the icons, but icons are in every component. So then that means every component needs a library update. And at that point too, I had each component was in a different Figma file, and that was also a nightmare and I didn't have it mapped to like how things were put together. So I had to update icons in one file, and then it would trigger a library update in another file, but I hadn't yet replaced those icons, and it was this big circular, disastrous mess. And I was basically over-engineering my system, thinking I was being clever, but by being clever, I was adding complexity. And sometimes just like clarity over brevity, be simple, keep it in the least amount of sources as possible. And then, as complexity grows, then you can make better decisions. I tend to be an over-engineer. I think that's my biggest problem.
Yeah. Let me add one here also.
Simple, smart stuff.
Yeah. Let me add one more here also. In this bootcamp, one of the biggest mistakes some designers did, while we are planning for the multi-theme design system, we didn't build a good structure, or we built the structure map, but we didn't test end-to-end the process. So for example, it works fine on Figma. I can navigate between themes, everything working fine, but how can I convert this to specific themes and translate it to CSS files, for example? The teams that avoid this last part of testing end-to-end the process, they discover at the end, this is not a good structure, we have to change it again. And in big companies or in their project, maybe this can waste months of works if you didn't test the entire process for a small component and make sure this process working fine for everyone in the team. Good.
Yep, and your developers are going to be your besties at that moment, because they know that if there's an end-to-end process mistake that's been made, they know, and they will go through and be like, but have you thought about this, and have you thought about that, have you thought about that, because that's how their brains work. So think making friends with developers early on is also very helpful.
Good. We run out of time, so I just want to pick one more question from here. I don't need to waste your time. I really appreciate the time you give us. Okay. Okay, maybe we answer this also behind the scenes. This is related to the structure. I think you also answered. Let me go here. Measure success, something easy. Okay, maybe we can take one of this. Yeah, you can pick anyone.
Okay. How do you balance long-term system quality with short-term business priorities when leadership is pushing for change? I teach in my workshops this idea of the past, present, future canvas. And so what that means is every time I go into a meeting and I'm hearing something, it's like a goal that someone has or something that the business is striving towards or something they're struggling with, I put it in a big Jamboard and I organize it into past, present, and future. And then anything I want to do with the design system, I try to see how I can map it to one of those things that they're aiming for in the future. I also want to make sure that I'm making decisions today, future-friendly decisions. So what decisions can I make today that set up myself and the business for the future that they want to be in, right? And so if I know that high contrast color modes for accessibility is something that they're striving towards in the future, they're not going to do it now. But I know that that's coming at some point in the future. If I'm already doing a token architecture sort of revision on color, I'm going to think about that now. And I'm going to slot it in now, even though I'm not going to do the work. And then when I present the work, I'm going to say, hey, I did this today to set us up for the future that we want to be in. And I'm always connecting the dots back to those bigger goals of the organization, the business, leadership. And I'm also asking my stakeholders, my manager, my boss, is there anything that I don't know about that I should know about that could be solved by something I'm working on? And just by asking all the time, they're going to be like, wow, this person is very business oriented. They're not just someone that's in Figma pushing pixels. They care about the business, right? Because design systems are meant to help organizations scale. So we work faster with the same amount of resources or less so that they can take on more clients, more contracts, more this, more that. But we have to know what their goals are in order to get them there. And that's how I balance it, is I'm always just trying to connect the dots. And if I have to make a decision, if it connects more dots, that's the decision we go with. So you can kind of be a little bit like PM minded in that way when you're making those decisions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sam. Yeah, thanks for your time. Yeah, we need to thank you for all your insights and the real world experience. Yeah, you have shared with us in this session. We really appreciate.
Anytime. It's so great to meet you all. It's funny because I do a TA for a Design Systems Bootcamp.
Yeah.
And I remember the first student we had that was doing English and Arabic split. They had, in their projects, they had to say like, letter spacing, why did you change it or not? And he said something that will stick with me forever. He said, no, I didn't change the letter spacing on the Arabic glyphs because in Arabic, the letters are supposed to kiss. And I was like, oh, this is so romantic. So when I saw you guys with the different densities, I was like, I just remembered it in my mind. So there's not enough people in design systems from your side of the world who are sharing what they're learning and the mistakes that they're making along the way and the decisions that you're making. So if I could encourage all of you to create case studies of the work you're doing and the decisions you're making and share what you can legally, obviously, with the community so we can all learn from you, because a lot of us in Europe and North America are dealing with global international companies. But then when it comes to dealing with the Arabic language, for example, I'm like, I don't know, go find a designer that lives there that can give us the real tea, because there's a lot more to it than just swapping out a font family and changing the direction. Like, I would have never known that the letters had to kiss, right? I wouldn't have known that. So thank you for all you're doing, and be proud of the work that you're doing and all the little nuances, and keep sharing what you're learning in the world. And I'm around. I know a lot of you had already added me on LinkedIn and such, but I'm here, I'm around, and I'm excited to meet you all. So thank you for having me.
Thanks so much. Maybe only one more if you have time. If you can share a
I
little,
mean, I think I
yeah,
had my calendar blocked until 2, so like,
it's okay.
go ahead.
If you can share more about your workshop and the bootcamp you are doing, maybe this is a good opportunity also for
Sure.
everyone here. Maybe also they share with other friends. They are interested.
Yeah.
To join.
So I'm not really doing the bootcamp right now. That was another person who teaches it, and I was just like a TA for that one. But I am teaching a workshop in April with Smashing on naming and design systems, which if you start researching on the internet is something that I'm pretty passionate about, and one of the people who spend far too much time thinking about it and trying to make a systematic approach to it. I teach a couple of times a year workshops on multi-dimensional theming and design systems. So like really getting into architecture of, theming and design systems and design tokens. I am about to release a component library for Figma based off of Radix, which is set up with multi-dimensional theming baked into it and component-specific tokens. And I'm hoping to release the LLM optimized documents that go with that. So you could basically pump these things into your LLM of choice, and it would be able to work with it to create design, which is kind of the hope. So I'm working on that this year. And just trying to make more content so that I can share what I've learned along the way with the world. So.
Awesome. I will share with you guys the link for the workshop for Sam. Yeah, after this. Good. By the way, how is the session you did last week with Lovable? She built.
I built a tool actually in 48 hours. I was accepted to be a part of Lovable's build-a-thon called She Builds. 48 hours, 0 to 1, based on an idea you had to submit ahead of time. And I got unlimited credits and then support from their team and their engineers. And like as we got stuck along the way, it was really cool. Like 2,000 people applied, 215 were accepted. My project is a systems mapping tool through the lens of design systems. So I have it working right now where you can just upload your design tokens into the tool and it creates the systems map for you of how it works already, which is pretty cool. And I'm hoping to expand that because I deal with a lot of clients who come to me and they say things like, okay, we're doing a rebrand and we're introducing a new typeface. And I'm like, okay. Like, we have no idea what the impact of that is. Because we have, 600 designers and 3,000 developers and 5 design systems. And I'm like, cool. So how do your tokens work? I don't know. Okay. What's the flow of information through your variables to your Figma files? I don't know. Okay. What does your GitHub look like? Which one? We have 10. And really the only way to sort this out is to create a systems map and to do an inventory and an audit and try to figure out like what is the lay of the land that we're looking at here, and then you can zoom into each piece, like real systems thinking sort of stuff. And there currently is no tools on the market that do interactive systems mapping. There are lots of diagramming tools out there that will help you create a systems map, but nothing that will allow you to interact with it. So you can like zoom in, see the connection between the stuff, and, look at the tokens, all that sort of stuff. So they're almost done the wrap up on the judging, and then I'll get to continue to work on it because they gave me another 700 credits to keep building it. So that's pretty cool.
Awesome. I want to take a chance also to thank you about the naming template you have shared in FigJam, plus also the AI agent. Well, I showed the team, how we can handle this. So thanks for helping the community for that.
You're welcome. I have 2 weeks. Almost 2 weeks off, and I am going to be refining all of that. So I've got, even more better stuff in there, more templates coming.
Awesome.
So stay tuned for the new year. There'll be more stuff for you guys to learn off of. So,
Awesome. Anyone want to ask any questions, guys? You can pick maximum 2 questions. Sam, you have time, right?
Yep, I had until 2 blocked off for you. So
go ahead, Mohammed.
Thank you so much, Sam. You kind of already touched on this, but I wanted to ask you to kind of expand a little bit. You mentioned that building allies is really important, and you also touched on the trust side of things and kicking it off iteratively. So when you think about that, especially because working a 9 to 5, for an example, you're going to be evaluated on certain things. So how would you go about motivating other team members and exciting them? to join you in this little passion project of yours to build the tokens structure?
Well, I mean, having people come to a solution together helps them feel invested in implementing the solution. So when I start with a new team, I always do a coffee chat with people just to get to know, like, what are you into outside of work? What did you do before this? Key question I always ask, what do you like working on versus what you actually work on? Because that helps me know who I'm going to start asking the right questions to as I get ideas or as I come up with something. And then I never want to assume that I can solve everybody's problems so that I know how to do their job better. Most of the time I don't, but I'll say to them, hey, I was thinking about this, and I found this article, and I was wondering what you think about that, and like, how would this maybe solve this problem, or could we do it this way? And by asking questions and trying to learn from these people, they end up becoming an ally, because the one thing that developers love is to talk about what they do, how they do it, and why they do it, right? That's why they're here, is to build stuff. And so if I'm genuinely interested in learning from them, and I always am, they start to trust me because they know that, like, I'm only going to come to them when I have something that will actually benefit them, or I'm not wasting their time. I'm not trying to tell them what to do. I'm trying to understand how they work so that I can do what I can to make their life better, and just start asking for feedback. You know, like, yeah, I was thinking about this way. I've got this little map mocked up. What did I forget? Do you have time to take a look at it? Or I noticed you do it this way. Where can I learn more about that? So if you just always lead with curiosity, they end up knowing that you're the kind of person that's trying to grow and be better, and then they want you to be a part of it, right? Developers with this whole open source community, this is how they were all like raised. You know, they all like help each other out, and they do that. And so not all developers are great, you know, developers, but usually they have an archetype where they want to solve problems, they want to build stuff, and they're usually pretty stubborn and want to do it the right way. So leading with curiosity and trying to get to know people outside of work is like, it's a good way to do it.
Awesome. Any more questions, guys? Thanks. Good. So maybe before you go, Sam, we can just take one selfie or screenshot. Anyone guys want to open the camera? I can take a screenshot from my side. Anyone more? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Sam, for your insights. It was really helpful. Thanks for your time. Thanks for having you. This is really, really appreciated.
Yeah, anytime. Feel free to reach out. I'm around. I'm on the internet. I'm writing stuff. I'm trying to, you know, help create content. If there's something that we don't know and we can't find it, it's because somebody like me hasn't written it yet or done a video on it yet. So don't be afraid to like just ask.
Sure. Thanks so much, Sam. Thank you.
And Osama, I'm going to ask you for feedback on my UI kit. You're on my hit list. So
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Okay, bye everyone. Thank you for your time.
Bye,
Nice to
Sam.
meet y'all.
Bye. Have a good day. اهلا. انا قلت انت هتسأله اسئله كتير. كلكم ميوت على فكره.
بتتكلم بسرعه جدا جدا جدا.
ايوه بجد.
ده هي كده بالراحه.
ايه مش عارفه يعني الحمد لله.